Physical resistance and effective hit points for Clan Eshin. This is a cute subject, but I wanted to fit it in because I am the sort of mad rat scientist who must yield to observable test results at some point. Many Cathayan troops and brave Eshin warriors were sacrificed to the horned rat in the making of this video. Please like, subscribe, notify bell, and maybe even comment to help me level up this channel. What are effective hit points? Borrowing from other games and systems, it's when some kind of game mechanic makes HP last more than it looks like at face value, as the number you see on the screen. Here, the mechanic is physical resistance. As I went into in recent videos, this means non-magical damage has to fight harder to reduce a character to 0 hit points or to hit the breaking and routing point of a unit. This won't help against Daemonettes, but it will against 1,000 Empire Swordsmen. So, with that caveat, what's the math? Accounting for physical resistance, and I had to remind myself it's only 20% for Knight and Gutter runners. Addendum. Had to eat some humble pie without any ill feeling, since I haven't been doing this kind of video in a long time. So it's okay. I was applying math that was too simple, saying, okay, it's like having 20% more HP. That's somewhat helpful, but it's not precise. And here's why, and I think this is more helpful to explain than just correct. If something has 100 hit points and an attacker does 10 points of damage per blow, reducing the damage to 8 points per blow doesn't mean it takes 12 blows to kill that target. It takes 12.5 to reduce it from 100 to 0 HP, math-wise. So, 20% physical resistance means plus 25% effective health. Yes, swings exist in single digits only, but this was a simplified example. Over entire units, and with variable levels of incoming damage, the other 5% does matter. So this is with revised math. Knight Runners, 6720 HP to 8400 effective hit points. Gutter Runners, 6960 to 8700. Triads and Death Runners, 5760 becomes 8228. Assassins, 3572 to 5103. Eshin Sorcerers, 3600 to 5143. Master Assassins, 3688 to 5268. We'll add more caveats, but Snitch is special because, unlike Master Assassins generally, his skill tree allows another plus 15% physical resistance without the intervention of items. Snitch begins with 3920 HP. With 45% physical resistance, his effective HP is 7127. Now, that's not going to make anyone mistake him for Grimgore, because Grimgore has ridiculously high armor, and the right opponents can give him a beating and force him to back off, but it's still significant. Master Assassins do get tougher than he seems, for plus 10% HP, plus 14.29% HP if facing non-magical opposition. In fact, the biggest threat to Master Assassins tends to be fatigue, so they become much better if you get the Seasoned Campaigner trait for them from fighting battles farther from your capital, and that includes sea lanes, which is very relevant for Eshin. Looping back, basic clan rats are 9,600 hit points split among 160 entities. Devoted Marauders of Slaanesh are 9,360 HP. Decay gives them physical resistance. That's usually not a thing with either unit. This is still a useful comparison because the armor values are kind of similar because effective HP ignores armor differences. Stormvermin, Sword, and Board have 9,920 health split between 160 entities, so they're barely beefier than Clan Rats, 62 per entity versus 60. Per entity, Devoted Marauders are 78. Of course, the Stormvermin are far more armored. If you're wondering about Plague Monks, that's a good question. They come with 15% physical resistance stock on 120 entity melee units. So what's that math? And I revised this section too. Plague Monks, 9,120 HP to 10,729 EHP. Sensor Bearers, 9,600 HP to 11,293 effective hit points. Now, they have a trick the runners do not. Rank 7 end up benefit from mutagenic elixir redline skills with plus 10% physical resistance, usually saved for monsters. So, EHP against the mundane goes up to Plague Monks Mutagenic, 12,157 EHP, Sensor Bearers, 12,797 EHP. As you can see, while their armor is pretty garbage, making Stormvermin own that niche very firmly, hey, 12,000 is zombie level on a 120 entity unit. When factoring in the armor, this is Bearman territory. Without, the rank 7 boost is still, let's say, Marauder Great Warriors of Nurgle territory, even for the base unit, which is still absurdly high, and with better melee defense in that case, but the lack of shields felt like a fair point of comparison. So, Rat Monks have a place too. Back to where we began, for per rat health, Triads and Deathrunners are 80 to start, effective HP drags this to 104 HP per entity. This combines with one last thing, and that's melee defense, with and without strength in numbers bolstering it, and we'll breeze through that. But I think you're already seeing the truth of the matter. Yes, these skirmish runners truly are decent melee combatants, it doesn't make them good. On the other hand, let's not glorify Clan Rat deadliness. They hold decently until morale breaks, that's their job. Night Runners start at 14 melee defense, strength in numbers pushes it to 22, while health is over 50%. Gutter Runners go from 20 to 28, and these are 120 entity units, so they outfight a lot of weaklings. Triads and Deathrunners are 28, going up to 36, which isn't terrible, but it barely cracks the mediocrity line. Clan Rats are 18 going up to 26, Clan Rats Spears are 24 going to 32, which is the mediocrity line. Clan Rat Shields are 22 going up to 30, Spear Shields are 28 going up to 36. And to put them all in their place, Stormvermin Sword and Board, which are 90 armor and regular shields per entity, have melee defense 36, rising to 44 with strength in numbers. They're no Infernal Ironsworn, but again, 160 entity unit. What was the point of all this? Well, aside from the Stormvermin option, which is luxury priced for what you get, but is indeed the toughest option here. 1. Spells may be the natural enemy of physical resistance, but when you're dealing with Triads and Deathrunners, they can absorb a burning head better than the others. It's counterintuitive, the units are lower HP overall, but their HP per rat is indeed higher. They can still get really beat up if allowed to take hit after hit, but still. 2. Against enemies without magical attack, Stormvermin are still number 1 and priced for it. Clan Rats with spears and shields can give you parity at higher overall health, but given the high per rat HP and the higher leadership, the Triads and Deathrunners are better holding units than any of the other options, other than Stormvermin. That's right, holding units, as in, whatever their virtues, killing stuff. They'll pin an infantry force in place and not give ground for an absurd duration. This is the observation I've made, supported by a lot of campaign play, and so, while enough spell bombardment will nonetheless wreck you, in the mushy middle, they're holding the enemy stupidly well, given that they shouldn't, at least not in your head. Now, as for how this works, that comes down to the 72 entities on Ultra Scale, the same mismatch that lets greenskins overwhelm them, a mix of weapon strength being quite high, and the WoW mechanic stuff, but hey, join the club, greenskins do that to most everybody. It works in their favor if the incoming damage is relatively weak, or at least weaker than that. More of their entities are engaged in combat, spreading damage between them and minimizing the number of deaths. In contrast, a Clan Rat unit is like an old phalanx. The front row is guaranteed to die. Those rats are taking damage until death, and then other rats step up, very literally, but those rats are fresh HP-wise. Thus, we get to the heart of the matter. Triads and Deathrunners are the kings of low-casualty Skaven melee combat. That doesn't mean that they can win through melee combat alone, more like, not like they can win efficiently without trickery. Deceit, Menace Blows, Magical Lightning, Master Assassin Shuriken Spam, everybody has their own gimmick. But, when they win, they tend to win with absurdly low actual entities dead. In contrast, in pure melee, the regular units usually lose their morale and break long before the health pools are really done. Their problem is more their lack of killing, not their worth in raw holding. And obviously, they don't do great late in a battle with strength in numbers stripped. All of them eat dirt at that point, mind you. But if the idea is to buy time while skirmishers fire over them or loop behind them, or warp lightning wrecks pockets of resistance, or so on and so forth, all of these units exist on a continuum. with Night Runners being least of course, but yes, broadly speaking, they buy time. Obviously, the wrong unit buys less if the enemy is cavalry, chariots, and so on, but against infantry they all do. It's just a matter of degree. And if it's not against demonettes, that degree will feel weirdly high, and now you have a mathematical reason to help you understand why it feels weirdly high. Try it, you'll see for yourself. Any way you slice it, the more physical resistance is involved, the higher the likelihood friendly fire will be the undoing rather than enemy fire. And believe me, I get it, if all you have is a poisoned wind mortar, everything looks like a cluster of Cathayan infantry. It's a good solution to a lot of problems. Weapons teams do that in general, finicky uses aside. So it's to say that you need to complete the puzzle by adding the missing piece, the hammer blow, to do burst damage. I mentioned Warp Lightning because it's really good at this. Basically anything not as inaccurate as the mortars can help, and some damage to your own side is absolutely acceptable. Some. There's other stuff, including others of these units helping, but a rattling gun raking the back of the enemy tends to work out just fine too. Back to the characters for a moment, this means that even though the assassin characters, to some extent, this is less of a snitch problem because Whirl of Weeping Blades is good at clearing some space around him. They have difficulty cleaving enemies in melee, to some extent normally just being characters at all, and to more of an extent, if against mundane opponents, they're weirdly tanky. As speed bumps, you can do a lot squishier. Like anyone else, the enemy could just try and ignore them and crash your lines behind the heroes too, but any clustered up around the characters have a hard time beating them down. It's not impossible, but it's going to take them a little while. Well, you can only stretch this so far, but still, there's a lot of tougher than they seem at work. If you made it this far, thanks for joining me for this math-based ramble, and let me know what you think in the comments. I get in ruts too, but this is my self-help effort. What can I say? Those mortars are good against the proper targets, and for other stuff, absurd numbers of shurikens do help. Take care, and have fun using thin lines to pin things in place for big vortex spells, because Black Whirlwind and Plague are quite well behaved compared to some options.